Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Collective Intelligence Block Party number 25. This is our 25th consecutive block party, and we're excited to be kicking off with food healers and a great conversation. And I would like to introduce it to our brother, Dr. Silas Rao, who the creator, founder of Food Healers. Silas, tell us what's going on, and let's kick off this discussion of getting everyone fed. And tell us how it's going, Silas. How you doing today?
Well, things are going well. Thank you for organizing this, and thank you for the opportunity. I read that Martin Rowe of Brighter Green had estimated that in food deserts, it costs 2.5 times as much to eat healthy than it does to eat fast food. Okay, so that's the prevailing story that we tell ourselves. It's more expensive to eat healthy than it is to eat fast food in food deserts. And I think what we're trying to do with Food Healers is to completely upend that by pointing out that if we cook in volume and we cook collectively, it doesn't cost that much to eat healthy. Because you just go buy a sack of potatoes, sack of beans, so it's one trip you make for buying in bulk, and then you cook in bulk, and we amortize the costs, and suddenly the fast food people are the most expensive, right? And I think that's what we are trying to do. I mean, the resources were already there in the food deserts for people to do this. So all we are doing is pointing it out, and maybe trying to involve places of worship to take the lead so that they can serve the community. And so it's interesting, when you think about it, there's nothing new in what you're doing. It was already there. They could have done it themselves, right? So collective cooking, to reduce cost of healthy diet. I mean, healthy food, healthy stew can be cooked, as Jamin has been calculating, for a few pennies per serving. Maybe 25 cents at most, right, per serving.
Probably less than 10 cents per pound of cooked stew, as we've been doing the math. But back to you, Silas.
Right. Yeah, I know. I mean, what I'm finding when I cook here is that probably the most expensive part of it is the herbs. But some of these herbs actually grow in the wild, everywhere. So you can easily grow it in your neighborhood. Rosemary is very robust. It grows almost everywhere. So then it gives an opportunity for the community to start bringing their contribution. Saying, okay, here is something that I can bring to the stew. The nice thing about a stew is that anything goes. It just makes the taste a little bit more exotic, right? Whatever you put in it.
That's exactly, yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the base that we need is beans or lentils and some grains, rice or something like that you can buy in, that you have to buy in bulk. And if you buy in bulk, even at Costco, it doesn't cost that much, For 50 pounds, you can get 50-pound bag of rice you can get for $17 at Costco. Yeah, so it's not that every individual has to go do this. It's just someone designated in the community goes and does it, goes and buys the food in bulk, and then you cook the stew together. Okay, and you can even make it a self-sustaining proposition by charging people 50 cents for a meal, which will be cheaper than what they're paying at McDonald's. So you want to get McDonald's out of business, this is the way to do it.
And Silas, whenever you'd like, I'd like to put in a plug for the mass scale potential for this that you actually woke me up to when you researched how much would it cost to buy a truckload of lentils.
Right.
But whenever you want, you just press go, and whenever you're ready, and I'll
Tell me, because I haven't been updated on the conversation since last Friday. So tell me what you've been thinking.
Sure, totally. So, so first of all, just one data point. Silas did some research online to find out, what would it cost to buy actually a truckload of lentils, 40 tons of lentils, and the cost per pound we calculated about 6.5 cents a pound. Dry lentils, right? Now you take a pound of dry lentils, and I presume we've all cooked lentils at home. They're super tiny, and when you cook them, you add several liters of water to that 1 pound of lentils, and so you end up with several pounds of cooked lentils for that 6.5 cents of input of a pound of dry lentils, right? So the lentil contribution to the stew comes in at, around a penny per pound wet cooked weight, right? And of course, the overall blended cost of the stew will be a weighted average of these different components, which again, if you buy by the 40-ton truckload, come in at pennies per pound dry weight, and therefore on the order of a penny or two wet weight. So it's not like we're trying to throw crap cheap ingredients into the stew. We targeted lentils because they're one of the most nutritious foods on earth. It just so happens that it is mind-bogglingly economical if you go straight to the source, to the farm, and say, look, here's my 40-ton bulk truck, fill me up, right? They'll charge you 6.5 cents a pound in Canada, right? 6.5 cents American, but Canada produces just bumper crops of this stuff. And what gets expensive is if you involve all these middlemen who package it and brand it and break in bulk and ship it around and advertise it and all this other stuff. That's what gets expensive. That's what makes it expensive. And so so just imagine, and I'm just itching to get this actually physically started. So this is becoming more and more my main focus, or our main focus, because we're doing it collectively, which is totally the way to go. Imagine we get some food factory or huge industrial kitchen that's not being utilized. And there's a lot of those these days, thanks to COVID. And we bring in a 40-ton truckload of lentils, 40-ton truckload of rice, or maybe 2 truckloads of rice to get the ratio right. Probably 3 or 4 truckloads of potatoes, because those are already bulked out, right? Imagine the truckload of lentils kind of expanding into several truckloads of cooked lentils, right? The truckload of potatoes doesn't really expand, maybe a little bit, right? So imagine in the end, we've got 15 truckloads dry weight or uncooked weight, which will probably expand out to closer to 30 or 40 truckloads wet cooked weight. And so with all those raw materials, here's kind of what I'm thinking operationally. This is it's a little bit of a detail, but not that big. I learned a lesson from some Italian friends years ago. It was Christmas time and they were making gnocchi. And I said, well, what's the ratio of potatoes to flour? And the answer, it depends. Until we start working with the potatoes, we don't know how starchy they are. And so, the amount of flour goes up or down depending on how much starch the potatoes are contributing. The broader lesson here, every crop is a little different in flavor, in starch, and whatever. So since we're going to be producing dozens of tons of food, right, in a production run, we start out, cooking up relatively small batches, hundreds of pounds, whatever, and then do the blend, mix it, add some seasoning, do what the chefs do, add a little of this, a little of that until we get it right. But of course, measuring everything, totally data driven. Once we get the right formula, then we crank it out, right? We'll have huge pots that are just about cooking lentils. in Asia, they've mastered the fine art of mega rice cookers that just produce massive amounts of rice, and they just do it perfectly. So separate operations will be heating up and cooking lentils, potatoes, rice, quinoa, other grains, pasta, whatever. And then in the end, all these get blended into the stew, a slurry, and then refrigerated, brought down to just above freezing. So it's still liquid, but essentially freezing. So minimal bacteria growth. Also aided tremendously by the fact that it's plant-based, 100% plant-based. And then we load this up bulk into these bulk trucks. Pardon the use of a dairy example, but they're just the most visible things. These milk trucks that are stainless steel, super clean, of course, because they can't tolerate even a speck of bacteria. It'll screw up the whole truck. So my point is that bulk transport of food fluids exists, and it's a mastered, skill set. And so we fill up these bulk trucks, 5-ton, 10-ton, drive them out to the neighborhoods and dispense the stew in a glorified spigot, right? And all the mechanical engineering is well worked out as to how to get it to extrude. Even if it's thick and has chunky potatoes and all that, we can get it to extrude, no problem. And the idea is we go to the neighborhoods, everyone comes out with their own pots and pans or whatever, containers, and we fill it up right there. Zero packaging of any kind. Zero single-use packaging, zero multi-use packaging. Last time I checked, 0 plus 0 equals 0 packaging of any kind. And that's part of so this is just, we're literally producing mobile food on tap. Open up the tap, food comes out. That'll be the experience of people in the neighborhoods. And because it'll be on the orders of pennies per pound, it's just mind-bogglingly economical. And as we've been analyzing over the last few days, there's a story, there's actually several stories out there about donut economics, but where I think it came from was, in San Francisco, they found if you put out a box of donuts in an office with a tip jar, everyone will take the donuts, and the amount of money in the tip jar at the end of the day will exceed the cost of the box of donuts. So you can imagine here with this stew and this story of nutritious food on tap, feeding everyone, bringing the food to everyone, it's going to get everyone's attention. And anyone with a functioning heart will say, I love this. I'm going to donate to it because my $1,000 contribution will pay for 15,000 meals. Incredible leverage. And we actually don't need that much money to actually make it take off. So the idea is to start it somewhere, right? Arizona and, Whidbey Island, Seattle are our two favorite starting places. Arizona, because Silas is already doing it in Arizona. It's just a matter of scaling it up. But there is so much passion for this idea right here in this community that we are going to make a big push to get the seed money. Think of this as a startup. We need to get the seed money to buy the first, just call it 10 truckloads, 400 tons, 40 tons per truckload times 10 trucks, 400 tons uncooked will probably yield, 1,000 tons cooked. 1,000 tons cooked will feed 1 million people, right? A kilogram per person, rough numbers. And so, so 10, all that quantity. So we get the 10 truckloads. We don't just cook it all up at once, of course. We cook it as fast as we can to fill up the bulk trucks, and then they need to go out and distribute. But we'll get all the news media involved. So we'll launch this with great fanfare as the solution to world hunger, and that this can be implemented anywhere. So the story is a huge part of it. The donations will come pouring in. Let me just tell Melissa, hey, sweetie, I'm going to start talking Whidbey Island. If you want to come join us. I'd like to start it here on Whidbey Island. Start one here. If we get in a big enough food operation, we can export the food down to Seattle, load the 5-10 trucks onto the ferry, drive down to Seattle, we're distributing. It's 3 more hours to the south and you're in Portland. Imagine we're feeding plant-based stew to everyone, protesters, police, whoever wants it. It's just food for everyone. So it becomes this big story. And then people start donating per donut economics. And then we could be in the black, you know, in very short order. And when we simply reveal to people, this is possible, this is the solution, who could disagree? Because we've got two big things in our favor that we didn't have a year ago. Number one, everybody's at home. So if we bring the food to the people, just like the Europeans pioneered months ago at the beginning of COVID, that's the best way to stop the spread. Bring them the food. Okay, we're bringing them the food, right? And the second thing is, a year ago, if somebody talked about feeding people food for free, they'd say, well, that's not very American. That's not very capitalist. They should get a job. But now in 2020, summer 2020, there are no jobs, right? What are they supposed to, what's everyone supposed to do? Go out and steal hubcaps? So we've got tremendous social, you know, invisible pressure pushing this idea forward, such that once we release it, it'll just be like the apple hitting the collective head of humanity. And it'll be like, of course. I mean, what we're going to do to food is what John D. Rockefeller did to oil, right? In the early days of the oil industry, it was small batch, it was expensive, you know, filled kerosene into metal containers that were expensive, manual labor, loaded onto trains and all that. John D. Rockefeller came along and he said, no, this can be done way more efficiently, pioneered modern, I'm not saying, oh, thank you, John. I'm just saying, you know, I'm just pointing out what he did in terms of efficiency. Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
Oh, I was just saying, yay, billionaires.
Totally. And Paul has his hand up. Go ahead, Paul.
So I began my career as an activist working at a food bank.
No, Paul, you're super scratchy. We got to do something with your mic.
Okay.
Oh, okay, but Paul will type it into the chat. Okay, I'll read once you've typed it into the chat. Often we are talking about U.S. food deserts, folks who are working 2 or 3 jobs who may not have time. You have models of this going on now. So obviously, this takes away the time. We just do it centrally. We just cook, you know, literally food by the dozens of tons, load it into trucks. It's on tap. Just show up with your pot. We'll fill you up for free, whoever you are, wherever you are. Rich neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods, we'll hit them all. Part of the reason we hit the rich neighborhoods, it's not that we're going to get a lot of people coming out with pots there, right? But we will get everyone's attention, and some people will try it. And again, when they see the story of how efficiently we're feeding the masses, and that the masses need it, and the population as a whole need it. It's not just the poor who need for people to be fed. The whole society needs for people to be fed, partly to keep people at home, partly to keep their immune systems up, and you know, also just to unite humanity. So we collectively are gung-ho to get this going. Ray, you got your hand up. You're on mute, Ray. You're on mute.
You mentioned people so they could stay at home. And just before we started recording, we were talking to Sue about a project that we did in Toronto where we made a bunch of chicken parm sandwiches. They're vegan, seitan chicken, deep fried, comfort food to be shared with homeless people. And we targeted a particular tent city that have ongoing tent city in a downtown park. How would this work for engaging those people who don't even have homes that are
Totally. We just drive the trucks to the tent cities and say, here is stew for everyone. Please bring your containers, your bowls, your pots, whatever you got. We'll fill you up, right? And, you know, if in a tent city they do anything collectively around food right already, you know, let's say they've got a big pot and a fire and whatnot that they can heat the pot. We'll fill up that whole pot and let them, you know, heat it up for the whole community, right? But it's unlimited food for if you, whatever your need is, we will give you that much food, right? If there's 100 people in the tent city, let's drop off a couple 100 kilos of stew in one drop, right? And we'll be back.
Would that be testing the, we were talking about last week about the Samaritan rule or Samaritan laws that are saying, okay, well, this isn't really how food is supposed to be moving around the city, but we'll look the other way. You're feeding people who are in need in houses. But when you feed somebody in a park, when you feed homeless people, the city planners may go, yeah, we really don't want that because that's going to draw, if you do it in Toronto, that'll draw all the homeless people from, far and wide, from Quebec, from Montreal. That quite often happens. That's the argument, that if you do something for the poor, then you draw more poor people to particular areas, and then the locals complain that there seems to be a lot of homeless people around. So it's a bit of you almost have to have a global plan in place where you feed everybody everywhere.
And that's exactly it. We'll come right out the gate saying this is the plan. So, wealthy Seattleites, don't worry about people coming into Seattle to get the freebies. We're going to bring the food to you. We're going to bring the food to wherever you are, small towns, rest stops, wherever. We will just food everywhere, right? That's the new paradigm, because it's so darn cheap. And because it'll be the #1 feel-good story in the world today. Well, we finally some good news. They're ending hunger, at least. They're feeding everyone. They found a massively efficient way, right? I almost want to create an organization called Standard Food to parallel Rockefeller's Standard Oil, because we're going to have these massive plants. We're just going to see semi after semi coming in, being cheered on by the vegan activists. Woo! Right? Bringing food to these plants, dozens of tons of food will be churned out. In New York City, imagine like a dozen big plants cranking out dozens of tons per day, right? Feeding 1 million food insecure in New York alone, trucks going around everywhere. This is going to be the feel-good story of the world for 2020. What on earth else is there to feel good about right now? This will be the big one, right? We need to think big, 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 because we got to feed everyone, right? And we might as well just solve it. And then everyone will be eating the same thing. And everyone will be served. It's just kind of like people will wake up to a whole new world. What? You're bringing me food? Who are you? Are you trying to sell this to me? No, it's free. Just eat. Who are you people? Well, we believe fundamentally in a few simple things. Everyone should be cared for. We need to eat plant-based and stop killing animals. And we need to save life on Earth generally, right? And so we start with feeding everyone. And over time, sooner rather than later, we begin to expand the conversation to, all right, now that we're getting this food thing rolling and it's all working and it's great, now we need to secure our ability to grow food going forward. And that means we need to cool the planet, right? And so, per the donut economics model, and there was actually an entrepreneur in San Francisco who, tried this out in her own office on the 40th floor of some skyscraper, found out that it was profitable, and then went around to multiple offices in downtown San Francisco, dropped off a box of donuts and a tip jar, box of donuts and a tip jar. At the end of the day, came back, recycled the empty donut boxes, and put all the money in the bank, right? Wash, rinse, repeat, and it was profitable. So per the same principle, I actually predict that this will be profitable. Not that we're trying to make money for ourselves. All the profits would go to expanding, right? Starting an operation in Haiti, starting an operation in the Dominican Republic, boom, 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 just expand. And then once everyone's fed and we just have a river of money pouring in from all the donations, the surplus beyond what we need to keep the food going, we invest in SRM, solar radiation management, so that the planet can keep growing the food. Now, in the meantime, Paul, your communities in Africa that are drought-stricken and starving, massive, bulk transport ships will be pouring in from Canadian ports with grain, right, to feed the factories in Africa that'll be doing the cooking and then the distribution. And we'll use whatever technologies to distribute that we have, if whatever it needs. bicycles, trains, trucks, ships, whatever, right? But everyone will be fed. And then we expanded to solar radiation management. So now consider that this decentralized online community that we're pioneering our part of here, collectively we do this all around the world, and we coordinate through this network of conversations. We share information, we share resources, we plan, we execute. This community that's making all this happen, and then goes on and makes solar radiation management happen to cool the planet, people are going to look at us and what we're doing to the world, feeding the world and cooling the planet. And then they're going to look at the governments of the world, building trillion-dollar militaries, right? And doing Arctic drilling. And, they're going to say, wait a second, which form of governance do we want? We're going to make the old model of governance obsolete, of corruption and, too much power concentrated in the hands of very few people, who then get brain damaged by that power and then just make all kinds of really stupid choices. We're going to show the world a better way to govern, right? Because what is governance? It's people coming together, making agreements, and then doing what they agree to do. We're coming together, agreeing to feed everyone, and then doing it. Nobody needed to be elected, right? And, eventually we can probably do this without money entirely. Once the world gets into it and says, wow, this donation thing is really working, you'll have a whole bunch of farmers saying, listen, I'm just going to donate my farm to the cause. I'm still going to own the land. But, all the produce, just take it. And volunteers come and work the land, right? It can be done all volunteer with no money at all. But for starters, we're going to do it with money, right? Because that's the way to get 10 truckloads as quickly as possible. Pay for it, right? And so I see this, we start this in one city or two cities or three cities or whatever, but wherever we start, wherever we have the first bulk trucks going out to deliver, we do a big press conference and let the world know this is happening. When people hear about it, they get so inspired. So I think this is just going to be the beginning of a worldwide revolution to feed everyone. All right, I'm going to go on mute. Would love to hear more from folks. Silas, what are you thinking and feeling about all this?
Yeah, Jamin, do you have an engineering team to operationalize what you want to do?
The short answer is yes, it's growing, and the team is right here. I mean, it's the community. I know, I actually know of a number of people in the food industry in the Seattle area, including food manufacturers and food distributors, because after Microsoft, I did a food-based startup trying to create kind of a proto version of this online marketplace for food, still in the old model. But anyway, the bottom line is I do know a lot of foodies who know all about food technology and whatnot. Yeah. So, and I think that's one of the next steps, is that we start to chunk this out into its respective disciplines: finance, logistics, food manufacturing, food delivery, politics, because we'll be reaching out to a lot of city governments saying, hey, here we are, we want to deliver food. We just want to make sure that, we do it right. Will you work with us? And this is going to be to the benefit of your people and therefore your government. I mean, if Mayor Jenny Durkin of Seattle cuts the ribbon on this and says, yep, you got the support of the police, fire department, EMTs, whatever you need, because you're basically proactively improving the health and wellness, right, and stay home ability of the people. Goodness, thank you. I mean, shoot, they might even donate. They might kick in, contribute. Once we start this, who knows what's going to happen next in terms of the amount of support that we're going to get. I think the world is going to fall in love with food healers and this new model. So the big action item right now, and welcome, Christopher. The big action item is invite everyone you know to the conversation. And at between 1 and 3 o'clock today, we're going to have our second consecutive meeting about the organization of all this. How do we best organize? right, to make all this happen. Our goal is that this online community get to 24/7 as quickly as possible. I predict it'll happen in a week, just on the strength of Food Healers. Food Healers is fast becoming the killer app. Actually, let's call it the life-giving app. It's becoming the lifer app of this online community. And I believe it's going to make the community grow to the millions. And we just have to start. So we have to get a critical mass of us together who can, per Silas's question, let's get the engineering right. We're not just going to wing it, right? Oh, this truck seems big enough. Let's fill it up with food. And then, we end up not doing it right in terms of hygiene and all that. No. We're going to do it right. 100% right, certified. Because once we start and we do that press conference and the world actually hears about what we're doing, they'll go crazy. People will love it. And as Ray can attest, a very small percentage of people will oppose it because we're communist or because, we're helping, whatever communities, and no. But that'll only make the thing more popular. A little bit of resistance.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I mean, it's certainly something that wouldn't have flown in the 80s because everybody go, well, that's communist. They're the bad guys, and that doesn't work. And we know that doesn't work. We know what doesn't work with what we're doing right now. And I think that is the time right for this idea. And we certainly have to test it. And if it's not right, then we keep pushing until it is right.
Exactly. But it is very important that we get it right the first time, that our initial, coming out to the world, our press conference, be just both large, impactful, and with very strong messages about, number one, just pointing out the reality. Silas has quoted a very impactful statistic or estimate put forth by the United Nations that the number of people who are food insecure will double by the end of 2020 relative to where it was at the end of 2019 to, something from 800 million food insecure to 1.6 billion. And just like you're saying, Ray, the biggest counter argument for, in the Reagan era of the Reagan Thatcher era of the 1980s is, damn it, go out and get a job. There's no handouts here. Handouts are actually bad for people. You give them handouts, you're going to hurt them. You're going to make them lazy. You're going to make them communist, whatever. And, but now, since there's no jobs and people need to stay at home, and it's people who are leaving the houses that are causing the spread, even the staunchest of Republicans, most of them will get behind this. I'm predicting, because for one thing, it'd be very unpopular to oppose this. Go ahead, Ray. Yeah, go ahead.
Canadian observation here. Americans seem to be having a little trouble pushing through an extremely rational, universal healthcare system. So I mean, the arrival of the COVID pandemic is one of those things that I think is absolutely critical, shifting our attitudes from that 80s mindset to current day, let's try something new because nothing is working at this moment. Without even Donald Trump being elected into office, I really don't think that we'd be seeing the shift that of favor towards Black Lives Matter if it hadn't been for Trump to really polarize everybody and make racism unpalatable. So it's, there is this, there's a huge price to pay for having somebody like him in office, especially from an environmentalist standpoint. But the way that it mobilizes people to say, I guess we can't really rely on the government to make the changes we want to see. We have to do it ourselves. So this being a non-government project, until the government sees this is a really good thing that's happening, people like it, let's support it because, we want to support things that people like to get reelected. So that's, yet there's the absolute refusal to embrace something that's good for the people, because I would say that Big Pharma has convinced everybody that universal basic health care is an un-American thing. And it is un-American. We just need to change that.
Yeah, here's the thing. If you look at it from kind of an industry structure analysis, right? Suppliers, customers, funders, et cetera. Healthcare is way more centralized in terms of the power and the profitability of, first and foremost, the big insurance companies, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, et cetera. They're just harvesting money from the poor, the middle class, everyone. And so if you want to do something with universal health care, number one, it's a much bigger shift that needs to happen. Whole hospitals and insurance and pharma and everything else. And between insurance, pharma, and big medical, no. They've got that thing locked down. On the other hand, some entrepreneurs getting together to make a bunch of stew, who do you need to ask permission to do that? Essentially no one, right? A little bit of local government, but I mean, there's no big opposition that's ready to go to say, no, don't do that. There's not a supermarket chain. There's not a food manufacturer. There's no one who you're immediately threatening, right?
How does it look? How has it shifted in the last while for public opinion on whether universal basic health care is popular? Is it still something that's entrenched in the right, that there's some problem with it, that it's?
Yeah. I mean, well, if you're talking the United States, like so many important issues, it's simply swept under the carpet. And I think Obamacare did the world a huge disservice in that it kind of created the false impression that now we have something like it. Well, Obamacare, healthcare, so it just sort of, it became a false flag. I don't know if that's the right metaphor, but it basically gave people the idea that it was a solved problem. Right now, everyone's paying twice as much for health insurance. So what exactly did that solve? But
I have to make a quick comment here. Obamacare did insure millions of people that would not have been insured. However, it did do some damage. Some people's other, regular policies went up, but overall, it did insure. I was actually a recipient of that too. It did.
Thank you.
He actually had to work with insurance companies on it. So they had their reputable hands involved in that process.
It was also called Obamacare, though, so that made it polarized, and people who voted for Trump went, yeah, get rid of that Obamacare. We don't want that. Not really realizing that it was something that they need. And so, there's. I kind of said two things there. I said this polarization was actually something that we needed. Yet it is such an oppositional force of how do you end the polarization? How do you do anything nonpartisan? How do you get everybody to agree on things? And I think that that's part of it. It's become so clownish. It's just become so contrary. And when politics just starts to sound like nuh-uh over and over again, back across the table, that people are, hopefully craving a new kind of politics, and they're able to engage in something that benefits everybody. And the idea that middle class is starting to suffer really pulls the rug out from under the bootstraps mindset, when it's now middle class white Americans who need to be fed because they don't have jobs. The first solution was to hire Trump to be the businessman to run the company, and basically the Rust Belt was the one that got him elected. So that Rust Belt is now going to be unemployed. So how are they going to feel about their own bootstraps, right? Now it's suddenly like, okay, let's feed everybody universal basic income, not having to fear. And that's always what's running everything, is that fear of survival. Let's redefine survival, because we can survive. The resources are here. We just have to figure out how to get rid of all this industrial era system that just doesn't work in our favor. It doesn't understand the realities of now, that we live in a society of abundance, yet nobody has anything except for the rich people.
Yeah. The healthcare thing, another complicating factor is, like, with universal healthcare, yeah, there'd be a lot of efficiency gains, but in terms of the fundamentals of a doctor visit and medication and all that, it's really more like who's going to pay for it. The cost fundamentally isn't changing that much. Who's going to pay for it? With food, we are radically transforming and upending the entire industry. And interesting, paradoxically, technology is playing a huge enabling role. If we didn't have 40-ton trucks and highways that worked and modern food technology and all that, this wouldn't be possible to do it at this scale, at this level of efficiency. Here, we're literally taking the costs down from dollars per meal. Like if you go to McDonald's, you're going to spend dollars for a meal, okay, down to pennies per meal. We're dropping the costs by 2 orders of magnitude. This will not go unnoticed. And just the very concept of food on tap, that food is suddenly as abundant as water for practical purposes, right? I couldn't eat 10 kilograms of food in a day to save my life. It's just not possible. There's a limit to how much you can eat. So for practical purposes, food will be as limitless as water. And we're going to come out and say exactly that. And for pennies per meal, who can argue, right? We'll have
system that insists that we have to have an economy of scarcity.
That's exactly right. In the capitalist system, that's what multiplies the price of food, because you've got a bunch of entrepreneurs and corporations that want to make big profits on it. And so they build brands and they do all this stuff to make it feel like if you want to be alive, you have to drink high fructose corn syrup, which is poison. So, and meat and dairy and, milk and all, blah, here we just come along and just bam, right in your face, a solution that this is going to be essentially the Tesla to the gas guzzlers that currently dominate the automotive landscape. This will be the Tesla of food, except instead of costing 4 times as much as a normal car, it'll cost 1% of what food is currently cost. I mean, it's revolutionary to an extreme that, frankly, I don't know that we can even wrap our heads around it properly until it's actually done. Until we actually see it and say, oh my goodness, it's actually working. It's kind of like this theoretical, I might as well be talking about growing food on Mars and beaming it down to Earth so that it's essentially free. And it's like, whoa, that sounds like an interesting sci-fi movie, right? Until we actually do it, I don't think we're really gonna get it fully. And once we do it, the world will get it. It'll be such a story, right? And we'll make it a party. Instead of an ice cream truck with lame music, we're going to have beautiful music, right? And singing, and it's just whoa. I mean, because what a party, what a celebration. Hey, guess what, people? You don't have to go hungry or malnourished anymore. We're bringing you the food, friends, and fun, and community, and volunteer, right? I mean, it's really, this is going to be the freaking revolution, right? We just got to do it. So the collective, yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Question, what about starting with tapping into organizations that already are providing, like Food Not Bombs is another one. There's a few, and that could be a great way to say how we can magnify what you're doing and join that already a built-in coalition.
Yeah, I love the idea, Nancy. You're absolutely right. Let's do that. Let's get all these folks together and say, look, we've got a whole new model that will solve the problem for a tiny fraction of what we're doing now. Because, food banks, food pantries are just kind of a derivative of the old capitalist model. Okay, here's some surplus. It's about to expire, but it's packaged, right? It's meat, it's dairy, it's chemicals. It's kind of what's leaking out of the old model, right? What we're talking about is a whole new model, just completely transformational. Danny got your hand up, and Silas. Go ahead, Danny.
So, as far as the King Mama app, I don't know where we stand on that actually coming into being? And is that going to be coordinated? Are we going ahead with this plan through some other vehicle? And then, I know I can help with marketing to other organizations, like the Interfaith Seasons Coalition for one, that group, things like that. So are we kind of constructing something right here in terms of like a marketing outreach plan, or just bring me up to date on that here?
Yeah, I'll let Silas speak to that. Your audio was a bit scratchy, hon. Maybe you can do something with your mic, and then Nancy had her hand up as well for after Silas. Go for it, Silas.
Yeah, I didn't hear much about what she was saying. It was about the K-Mama app and where it's at.
Yeah, and basically how it plays with what we're talking about here with this new volume model.
Right. So I was trying to, Silas, get a feel for where K-Mama app is. Is it going to be integrated, or will that be able to be used for this new model? Are we constructing a new model, kind of like in this brainstorming meeting here, coming up with some kind of a plan? And where are we at with K-Mama app? That's kind of what I was asking. Thanks.
Yeah, K-Mama app is trying to do a distributed version of what Jamin is talking about. Jamin is trying to make it in much bigger volumes. Whereas we were targeting mainly, community centers and places of worship to cook for their local community, and people to come and collect it from there, which is what the K-Mama app is designed to do. And
okay, so K-Mama app won't be able to be used for this larger program.
This larger
or
program,
is that,
okay. Basically it's just a big truck going around giving it to people, right? So you don't need to connect people with that, which is what the K-Mama app is trying to do. It's trying to say, okay, here is a station that you can go to, and you can go reserve your servings. So you're going to get it if you go there by this time.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's all the K-Mama app is trying to do. It's just connecting people who need food with those who have the food, the station that has the food. And yeah, for the last week, actually since Friday last week, I've been sort of out of commission for a little bit because I got tested, and so I was having symptoms. So, but I'm feeling much better now. Yeah.
And here's an idea, which is that if you wanted to build it into the K-Mama app, we could say basically, okay, here's where you can go to get food now. And in terms of this volume model, stone soup, stone stew, whatever we end up calling it, if you want to participate in that, right, click here. Or, especially once we started rolling, like in the Seattle area, I would, anyone who logs into the K-Mama app anywhere in Western Washington, hey, did you know about this? And it can be used to connect volunteers, even donors, whoever, to these bigger operations. So, because at the end of the day, we're all pulling in the same direction. We want everyone fed, right? And at whatever scale makes sense for whatever community. So if the churches in a particular community are doing the job, great, more power to them. Let's get them connected. Let's get them funded, whatever. And so, yeah. And Nancy had her hand up as well. Silas, were you complete?
Yeah.
Real quick, a well-fed world, Silas, I'm sure you know who they are too. It would be great to partner with them because that's their whole thing, to feed people. So they would be a great support for that. And just quickly, when one of the late night host shows did interview people on the street and asked them what they thought about whether they prefer Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. And a lot of people said, oh, definitely the Affordable Care Act, because they didn't know. It was pretty funny. That's all about that.
Good stuff. Alrighty, Danny, got your hand up, and then Silas.
Are we going to reach out primarily to any other foundation to try to partner up, or are we going to try to promote the vegan thing with this? That's a question. So non-vegan associations, which I assume, will be community churches and stuff anyway.
Well, the KMAM app is only going to be used for vegan food. So that's for sure. Otherwise, KMAM is going to wring my neck.
But as
Fine.
far as the outreach goes, I mean,
Yeah,
if the outreach can be anybody, right?
exactly.
And then we
Yeah.
try to convert these pregans, right? And give them some tasty meals to make them reconsider, not
Right.
force, you know what I mean? Invitation. Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So I've asked, Melvin if I can come and speak to some Black churches in the neighborhood here in Phoenix. So, and tell them, at least show them, look, if you cook it in bulk in the church, you can do it much, much cheaper than these fast food places, and therefore you can have healthy food available to your community. And now for the idea of the app, see if we can sign them up for that.
And is the app ready to go, Silas, or is it still under construction?
I have the source code, and but they're in the process of submitting it to Google and Apple. So that's what they're supposed to have done. So, but I haven't been able to check. I haven't checked up with them over the last week because I've been busy with other things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Nancy, go for it. Followed by
I think
Ray.
it would be also important to promote the nutritional profile, because a lot of people still think they need to eat meat, and they might be concerned about getting that. So you can say, the meal has this many grams of protein, all these nutrients.
Right. Right. Yeah, we will do that.
Yeah, and again, I think as we do promote, like for example, this plant-based stew, I think there's a lot of pre-vegans who just have this terrible misconception that they're going to be, emaciated, and maybe they won't be able to have children anymore if they stop, eating meat and dairy. And simply by delivering this plant-based stew and all the stories that will be written about it, and including the nutrition, which is a huge, huge part of the story, everyone's got to try it. You got to try it, right? So you'll try it and you'll say, this is delicious. Maybe these plant-based folks are up to something after all. All right, Ray had his hand up, and Silas, of course, jump in anytime, and then Nancy again, raise your hand. Go for it, Ray.
I'm wondering this app, after it goes live on the Apple Store and the Google Plus Store or Google Play Store, anybody can download it. What happens to people who download it that you're hoping it's for their neighborhood? What's keeping it from being an instantly international thing where participating churches may become aware of it and go, yeah, we want to do that? Or vegans find the churches in their neighborhood.
Right.
I'm thinking of like Father Donatello in Toronto, who's a vegan Catholic priest, whose church would probably be ready to participate right away. But what are the limitations of the app that would not allow that? Or is it more of a case of focusing on Tempeh because it's for the purpose of gaining attention and showing progress?
No, it is focusing on Tempeh just to do the beta testing, of the concepts, and if there are any issues that need to be sorted out, we need to sort it out in a small scale and not have it come to us after it's blown up. Number one. And so, yeah, you can download the app from anywhere, but then you will see that in your neighborhood there is no KMAMA station open. So then to to open a K-Mama station, you need to have the admin add you. So it's there's a backend, right? A database management that happens. And so through that, we are saying, okay, we assign admins for every city, and that admin then can sign up stations, communities, centers to join. So that's how we have spread. That we are controlling how it spreads.
So there's nothing to stop anyone from promoting the app, even though it's initially going to be beta tested, and that's a good language to use. We want to make sure that this works before we involve you in it. We don't want you to be beta tested. But to get people excited about it, get ready for it to come to Toronto or wherever, and say, okay, so you're going to, as a house of worship, need to have a project registered with the Canada Revenue Agency that we're going to collect money to feed people, and it's going to be this much. I worked in a church, so I know that they want to know a project with a very specific number, because I always had to deal with overages. What if people give too much and Canada Revenue? I mean, it's almost like an excuse that the church used, that their project had to be a particular size because any overage went into their pockets. And they say, well, what can we do? Canada Revenue wants us to state specifically on our projects what goes where. And that was an irritant to me, because some of them were projects that were, building wells in Africa. Why are you putting it into the fund to pave the parking lot in front of the church, right? And people who donate money are really concerned about those sort of things. So, but I'm kind of getting off topic here. So the church needs to be prepared to create a project by which they can accept donations. And after that happens, they need to recognize that their kitchen is going to start being used on a regular basis, fit it into whatever schedule they use it for right now, and designate who is going to be creating the food, who's actually going to be making the food. Is it somebody that's already on staff? Is it going to be from the church congregation who are interested in participating? Or do the vegans want to try to install people who know how to make vegan food, and are going to be diligent about doing so?
So initially, we are saying, this has to be whatever local food handling certifications have to be met, right? So whatever it is, we have to meet the local regulations as to how you do that. So it has to be a commercial kitchen, that community kitchen that has all these regulatory letters in place. And beyond that, we are saying it has to be whole food, plant-based, so that it is approved by doctors. Doctors are going to say, PCRM is going to say, yes, we support this because it is. It's healthy.
And you'll have somebody in each city that manages that sort of thing. And it's like
right. We'll have an admin for each city.
Right. And they will police to make sure that it actually is a vegan product that's being created. Because they can promise that and say, oh, so such and such church has a person who does all their cooking. We'll agree to this app. Yeah,
initially it's going to be just a stew. So, and we are saying, here is the formula for the stew, and you can substitute this for this for this. It's not a problem. But
and we'll just happen to have a bunch of chicken. We'll throw that in as well.
No, then it's not going to be approved by PCRM if you do that. So,
well, it shouldn't be approved by our app. I mean, this is part of what that administrator has to do, right? Because they're assuming this is vegan stew, and then it may or may not be, depending on which church you go to. And
yeah, these are all the things that we need to work out during the beta testing, and make sure that we can cover that.
And it may be logical to enlist vegans in our community that we know attend church and get them to approach their church, because then they're already part of that congregation and willing to, make sure that they're consistent and reliable inclusion in the network.
Right.
All right.
Go ahead, Jim.
Nancy has her hand up, and then I've got a horse shack. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Go for it, Nancy.
Quickly, people eat with their eyes first, and to help bust the myth about what vegan food is, it can be extremely powerful to show really good photos of the plate of vegan food. And will there be a corresponding website? And I would think it would be good to have it independent so that it will be more inclusive for people that aren't vegan to come onto, and organizations. I'm done.
Yes, there will be a corresponding website that's being worked on right now. Actually, they're reworking the entire Climate Healers website too. So to make it much more attractive for people.
All righty. Well, I've got an ooh, ooh, ooh. And first, I want to make sure we've answered. I want to thank Paul and Sue for your comments in the chat. And Paul, your question was about the distribution method, how we distribute the food. Was that, or what was your question, Paul? No? Go ahead. What was your question?
So I worked quite a while on hunger. And if you talk to food banks, I was working at a food bank right when the Reagan cuts to the safety net programs were going into effect. And there was this huge surge of hunger. It was like an engineered hunger epidemic. So anyhow, our resources were totally inadequate. And so we had people say to us, well, you should just only distribute beans, rice, lentils, dry grains, because the cost per calorie is so much lower. The thing is that a lot of people, that is not what they eat. It is not the thing you want when you are helping people who are hungry is to do absolutely nothing that suggests you are discounting their humanity, their autonomy, their right to make choices, because that's just, I don't know any food bank that would be comfortable saying, that's all we're going to offer. Right now in America, I've been staying in touch with food banks, even though that's not what I do now, because they always know. If there's a surge in hunger in America, they are the first people to know it. If there is extreme poverty in America suddenly on the rise, they're the first people to know it. So right now, tens of millions of people cannot afford food. And the question really is, it seems to me, I love this idea, but the question really is, what can we do to make it really clear that we respect the autonomy of these the beneficiaries, and it was sounding a little centralized. Like, okay, we've got one recipe for stew, we've got one idea for mass producing and distributing it. Let's do this. I get it, but I'm just wondering if there isn't a way to have a little more diversity. I didn't hear anything about vegetables. A little more diversity and just maybe not quite so centralized. Have you considered that?
Yeah, in fact, that was the very next comment I wanted to make, addresses that. First of all, as far as vegetables, the stew will contain vegetables, right? We sometimes get excited about the super low cost of lentils and rice and potatoes and all that, but make no mistake, the stew will have vegetables. And then actually, in terms of a more complete meal, we were thinking in terms of stew and then hot baked bread, which in Mexico City, you can get a loaf that will fill you up for a penny. when they do it in volume. So Mexico City already has this worked out for the bread part. And then the third component would be green smoothies, you know, kale and chia seeds and ginger and just good stuff that just this just makes a delicious immune boosting smoothie. Now, to get to your point about diversity, I totally get what you're saying. You know, people want to go to a food bank, or they're accustomed to, and then they got choice, right? So the stew delivery program would not be a food bank. We're not trying to compete with the food banks. We're not necessarily trying to give people, you know, massive choice. All we're doing is saying, hi, we're a bunch of innocent people who know that people are hungry, and we just want to feed everyone. And here's a bunch of stew. If you want it, here it is. If you don't want it, we won't be offended. Believe me, we're just offering stew to everyone, not forcing it down their throats. But here's the ooh idea that I got, and we're 6 minutes from the top of the hour. Jackie, sister, great to see you. But here's the ooh idea I got. Okay, what if we do a mashup between basically K-Mama with emphasis on the churches and the community kitchens, and the efficiency that is latent in bulk purchasing. So here's the revolutionary idea. What if we get, like, you know, say 20 churches in, you know, the Tempe area who are all game to basically make some stew. And we say, look, all right, we can order the 10 truckloads that'll create the basis for this, the lentils, the rice, the potatoes, the carrots, et cetera, et cetera. We have 20 churches. So what if we, for every 40-ton truck that comes in from Canada, we break it down into 20 equivalent portions of 2 tons each for each church, right? Church number 1, here's your 2 tons of lentils, your 3 tons of rice, your 4 tons of potatoes, You know, if you're a Jamaican church, go ahead and make spicy Jamaican stew for your peeps, right? If you're, you know, a Baha'i church and it's, you know, whoa, tone down the spices, fine, do that, right? Whatever, you know, but so we kind of become sort of like this centralized purchasing thing. And then we can say, you know, look, the cost is super low, but it's not zero. So for your 2 tons of stew, you know, your 2 tons of lentils, 2,000 kilos, 5,000 pounds, you know, that's 5,000 pounds at 6.5 cents a pound is like a few $100 for that 2 tons of lentils, right? Which you're never going to get anywhere near at Costco. It'll be 10 times that easily. So bulk purchasing, break in bulk. Anyway, it's just an idea that occurred to me that we could start out that way. And, you know, and if the 20 churches could each kick in for their portion, again, the cost is going to be but it's not going to be zero. So it's just a different way to start that would give a lot more variety and therefore a lot more choice, and leverage a lot of the smaller infrastructure that we have before we get the big plants going. Anyway, that's why we're here. We're groping with it and bouncing around ideas. All righty. Ray has his hand up, and but we also need to transition because it's 3 minutes from the top of the hour. So if we can make it short, Ray, and then Jackie and has a program for us for Divine Feminine. All right, go for it, Ray.
Oh, the short version. Okay. Well, one of the things I would really like to see with this program is that it becomes a community thing rather than a feed the hungry thing. It's obviously designed to feed the hungry, but if the community is all eating the food, then it's less of an issue. It dispels this soup kitchen kind of thing where you kind of have to swallow your pride and go, okay, I'm going to the soup kitchen because, you know, I had to take a hit to my dignity to survive. If this works, this is definitely a huge step towards what our society is going to need is less concentration on individuality and choice and more concentration on resiliency and community. So we need to solve these global issues, but really it's the work is going to be done in the community, strengthening the communities. And I think this is one way you kind of build in that Mennonite everybody eats together kind of aspect, and there's nothing shameful about it. And everybody eating the same thing the same day. I mean, I lived on the Hutterite colony, and it builds community, and it's not the worst thing in the world. It's almost, part of this psychology of I demand my choice in my restaurant with 100 different items on it. This project was originally going to implement restaurant kitchens, and the shift, just by chance, we discovered a Buddhist temple that had a full-time staff member that was ready to cook for people, and we realized that we didn't want to have any money transaction through the app. And churches have a built-in donation system. They are already able to accept donations, and they can handle all that. So if you just connect with a place of worship, they are able to handle the donations, and they're a trustworthy source of giving donations for them, we hope. At least more than an app, more than just giving money to a random app. Giving money to a local church makes a lot more sense. And I think it's like this profound thing that the church is now becoming, once again, the center of the community, what that they were designed to be in the first place. And really, I've worked at a church for 20 years, and they have a lot of concern that they're not the center of the community anymore, that they have to recruit to try to get the next generation to be involved. So I think it's a win for everybody if we can turn it into a community affair and challenge churches to embrace this kind of responsibility. And they should be aware of the people in their community. Part of it is trying to find the people who need the food. They should know who the people in their community are that need the food.
Totally.
Better stop, because that was much longer than the short version.
That's okay. No, it is the top of the hour. I want to welcome Brother Rohan. Welcome back. Great to see you. I just want to respond super quick to what Ray just said. The cool thing is, we'll see with this universal stew and delivering it to everyone and taking away the stigma of, only the poor people are getting that. Therefore, if I accept the stew, then I'm admitting to the world that I'm poor or something like that. No. We work with city governments to take a totally different spin. This is to stop the spread of COVID. You don't have to leave your home, and it's immune boosting food. So rich and poor, I don't care who you are. If you're Bill Gates, stay at home, we're going to bring you the food. So we take the money off the table. It's not about money. Rich and poor, stay home, we're going to deliver you the food. And then when we deliver it to the rich neighborhoods, of course, that's marketing to donors. What better way of marketing to donors than to say, here, eat it. Right? You're marketing plant-based foods, and you're marketing the program itself of feeding everyone, making it's a first step towards universal basic income, universal basic food. Anyway, with that, we are at the top of the hour. I want to welcome everyone who's joining: Myra, Benjamin, and Suzanne. Brother Rohan, who's got a great program for us. I'm going to turn it over. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's start a new recording. I'm going to stop the old recording, the previous one. And thanks again to Silas and everyone for making Food Healers a reality. And let's start a new recording.